Good evening all, and welcome. This video has been graciously sponsored by Skillshare. If you didn't know already, this amazing platform offers a variety of online classes on literally everything you can think of, taught by the experts. And with so many of us being stuck at home, like me, it might be time to brush up on existing skills or learn something entirely new. I've decided to take it back to basics and start doing my piano lessons again. I did miss piano, and with the help of Eve Williams, I have been making some serious progress. I do love the piano. So, I highly recommend checking that out if you're interested in playing, but there are also so many other classes you can do, so just go nuts. You can learn anything you want. The first 1,000 people who click the link in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium, which is beyond worth it, so go ahead and make the most of it. But for now, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. Oh, and before I forget, tomorrow I'm doing a very special live stream. I'm going to show my face for those of you who haven't seen it yet, so keep an eye out. It's going to be a real blast, right before our 100 Ghost Story Spectacular drops. No comp or never before heard stories. Probably. Alright then. So for now, get comfortable again and let the darkness take control. This happened at Otakon, the anime convention of the East Coast in the USA. At this point in time, I was around 15 years old, standing at a whopping 5'5". I'm a girl, slim, but other than that fairly unattractive and not too noticeable. Me, being the nerd that I am, was really excited to attend my first anime convention. My friend that had told me yes, there was the occasional creeper, but other than that everything was relatively fine because we're all a bunch of nerds in costumes trying to have fun like it's a 3-day Halloween party. Sounds like a blast, right? I put together a nicely homemade cosplay and I'm ready to face the world. Aya Shamei Maru from Ohome, for those interested. Now, I'm not a very social person, even around my friends, so they let me wander around the convention alone and go people watching and whatnot. On the second day, some dude comes up and wants a picture. He doesn't have any kind of costume on, but is wearing some anime shirt. I agree and pose, because a bunch of people have been asking for my picture. Then he asks me a bunch of questions, as if I were actually Aya. I knew a lot of people did roleplay as their characters, so I decided to play along and do just that. After the conversation was over, I decided to look back to the wares in the dealer's room. Guess who was there? Fanboy. Well, this guy was a little taller than me, and I could tell he was older, probably at least in his 20s. Dude starts chatting me up and shouts, "I love you, Tuhu," since he was standing right next to the table for it. He just seemed like a really eccentric fan to me, so I thought that he was weird, and probably didn't mean any harm. Now he starts talking to me about how much he loves Aya, calling her his waifu, and how I apparently look similar to how he imagines her in his head. This is where I start to get a bit concerned. I excuse myself and leave, but he follows me around and keeps asking me in-character questions. I looked around for a security person, but surprisingly, I didn't really see one outside of the man by the doors coming in, and we were on the other side of the room. So I kept wandering around trying to lose the dude because, I don't know, I didn't actually think to go through with alerting security as it wasn't necessarily an emergency. I wanted to contact one of my friends, but also didn't want to worry them. Like I said, I was 15 and more book smart than street smart. The dude keeps following me around and continues on with his questions. Eventually I manage to lose him and decide to get some overpriced lunch inside the convention center because I'm not going outside in the summer heat. I sit down at one of the tables and just think to myself, oh no, as I see the guy again in the distance ordering something too. Now that was probably the first time I've ever purposefully avoided someone. I picked up my sandwich and left. I don't think he noticed me. And that was my first mistake. The guy catches me in the halls and starts talking about the usual Aya-related stuff. I try giving him the cold shoulder, but it doesn't work very well, seeing as he's oblivious and very persistent. Then he starts talking about how cute I am and going on about the whole waifu thing. Now at this point I was pretty creeped out and asked him to stop. He seemed very confused and acted like he didn't know what he did wrong, and everything goes back to how it was 10 seconds ago. Now at this point he had followed me into the artist's alley, and I was probably visually uncomfortable. I'm practically backing away from this dude and I politely try to tell him to go away. Then I see some guy in a fursuit walk up to us. Now I'm sitting there thinking, oh God, please no. Because I immediately assume it's one of the dude's friends, as I notice he'd been watching us for at least a minute. The first thing that comes out of this giant blue dog's mouth is an irritated, hey buddy, I'm gonna need you to back off my friend. Now, I didn't know anyone who owned a fursuit, but I have never in my life been so relieved to see an impossibly colored anthropomorphic dog. Now this dog guy is extremely tall, dwarfing me and being big enough to intimidate fanboy over here. He doesn't want to leave though, making up some crap excuse about he's just having fun. Then another fursuiter comes up and stands next to the blue dog guy, and is also pretty big. There's two more in the background looking over at us, and it's at this point the weeb realizes it's time to leave, and reluctantly slinks away, looking back every so often. Since the furry crew was looking around at the vendor's wares, like I was, they decided to stick around with me for a bit to help ward off the creeper, and it worked. I never saw the dude again. It can certainly be unnerving to have someone follow you around so persistently. I am a regular congoer and cosplayer, so when I was offered a free badge to a small late summer comic book convention when I was 17, I thought why not? I really didn't have any cosplays planned out, since it was last minute, but I did have everything I needed to make a convincing Daisy Buchanan from The Great Gatsby. All day went great. I volunteered at the booth of the people who had invited me, handed out swag, and came across a lot of nice people who liked and recognized my Daisy ensemble. At the end of the day, I helped pack up and bid my friends farewell as they left the exhibit hall. I wandered back out the main hall, called my dad, and proceeded to wait on him to come pick me up. I knew it would be a while, so I stood by a pillar, playing on my phone to kill time. After a while, a man probably in his early to mid-30s came up to me and asked whom I was. I told him I was Daisy Buchanan. He smiled and asked if I could have a photo. I obliged, smiled, and posed for the picture as usual. But after this, things got weird. After he had taken the photo of me, he proceeded to stand really close to me, putting his arm up against the pillar I had against my back, and began to talk to me. "So what do you think of me?" he asked. "I don't know, I just met you," I replied, kind of feeling uncomfortable at this point. "Do you want to go to a party after this? The guy from 9 Inch Nails will be there," he then proceeded to say. I just kind of laughed because I knew who Trent Reznor was, and didn't need him labeled as the guy from 9 Inch Nails. However, I was also not stupid, and realized there would be no such party, and no such vague Trent Reznor. When I laughed meekly, though I suppose he took it as a sign of me enjoying his company. "You're not gonna fall in love with me, are you?" he asked. Then I was completely floored. Who does this guy think he is? I was so uncomfortable by that I felt my whole body heating up, and screamed at me that this guy was a complete and total creeper. I wanted to dart away, but my purse was on the ground and I really couldn't retrieve it without awkwardly crouching down near his legs and then darting off. No, was all I could reply with. "Well, I might fall in love with you." He was about to talk some more, but thankfully, a friend of his, I guess who had seen the scene unfold, finally interjected. He approached us both and engaged him in some trivial conversation. He was clearly irritated his friend had just blocked him while he was distracted, and I picked up my things and dashed off. I went back to the exhibit hall, but my friends were gone. Unsure of where to sit safely for my dad, I went out front. Luckily, I came across another old friend of mine outside and sat with her until he arrived. When I told my dad what happened, the only thing he said was, "I can make it so you can meet Trent Reznor if you want." Thank you, Dad, for your expert counseling. I did get the guy's business card, and when I went to his website, he seemed to be a legitimate photographer who shot models and whatnot. It made me wonder how he was able to keep clients with such a gross demeanor though. Last year, I signed up to work my local maid cafe for a big convention. I was so excited I landed a spot on their list. The maid cafe here is pretty kind of exclusive and runs the comm business in the area, despite there being another maid cafe. Around the time I got accepted, I had just started dating my current boyfriend a few weeks before the con. We're long distance though, and since we literally just started dating, he didn't have enough time to make it down here for the con. I was not shy about showing him off though. It was pretty well known I was taken before it even began. When I got there, I could tell the maid cafe was understaffed that year. See, because of some background stuff that I probably shouldn't discuss, the maid cafe was practically forced to open a second cafe spot at the same convention. I think someone said they had double the new hires. Anyway, because we were understaffed, training for the new hires kind of got pushed under the rug. It was fine for the first half of the day because we just walked around, advertised the cafe and stuff, but they had to throw us in at the cafe at some point. That's where I met my first customer. Off the bat, he looked very out of place. He was older than my grandpa. He had a black shirt with a wolf howling at the moon, and he was using a walker to get around. Had a big vase filled with what looked like roses made out of sheets of plastic, maybe cellophane. I'm not really sure what it was. I'm not trying to judge anyone who fits this description, but he just didn't look like the type to go to anime conventions, let alone the maid cafe. He was sitting there making the roses, and one of the butlers in charge of the new hires told me to take care of him. Mind you, I had like the absolute bare bones in terms of training. I did the typical maid cafe thing, took his order, got him some food and drink, did the little hand thing to charge up the food or whatever, and then sat and started to talk with him. He seemed nice at first, gave me one of the roses despite me being visibly uncomfortable accepting it, as I don't like to receive gifts from strangers due to past trauma. At this point, I didn't even let my boyfriend buy me things. Also, he wouldn't let me talk. He kept saying random facts and would always say, "I bet you didn't know that. Not a lot of people know that." Mind you, I'm almost done with college. I'm an educated woman and feel pretty insulted. At the same time, I'm trying to get a word in because I want to keep up with the cafe's standards and prove to my superiors I can hold a conversation with strangers. I keep trying to talk, but I'm constantly interrupted. Finally, he says, "Hey, do you know what third base is? I know what second base is, but I can't keep up with the kids in your lingo. Is third base intercourse?" My mouth hits the floor. I guess he could tell the question made me uncomfortable because he gave me another rose. It felt very much like I was being bribed not to tell the other maids about that wildly inappropriate remark, but all it did was distract me from a very different kind of unease. I stayed anyway because I didn't want to be seen as a bad host or have him complain to my superiors. Then he started to talk about women. Again, I wasn't allowed to get a word in because if I would have, I would have 1,000% told him I had a boyfriend. It feels like every time I tried to bring it up politely and casually, he would just change the subject, almost as if he knew I was simply waiting to say it. He told me he was always a loner, that women don't like him because he's an artist, and that he bangs beautiful women prettier than me. I bet my money he was expecting me to be grateful he was giving me the time of day when he could be out banging a total 10. Eye roll. But then he never stayed because women inherently don't like commitment. Like, I wish I could figure out what the hell he was talking about. Then before I could reply to his mad ravings, he told me to give him my hand. I was very confused, and it was more of in a demanding tone. He told me to give him my hand. I tried to give him the hand with a ring that my boyfriend gave me to ward off creeps, and the older man said, "No, not that one." I gave him my other one. God knows why I didn't just run away. I think I was scared I would be one of the ones who got in trouble for some reason. He opens up my palm and starts tracing the creases in it. I think he's doing palmistry or trying to. So I thought I finally had a chance to ease into conversation. I asked him if he was doing palmistry, to which he got really offended and said, "No, I'm reading your aura." I know people who read auras and I've never seen them do it like this, but okay. This is probably the creepiest part. He tells me I'm vain, that I value looks, but I can look past it. Gee, thanks. That I value intelligent conversation and want someone knowledgeable in my life, and that I want someone who appreciates art like me. That I want someone generous and kind who can protect me. The nail in the coffin was when he told me I was suited for an older man. I wanted to cry because while he was describing my boyfriend to a T, I knew he was trying to tell me he was perfect for me and that I needed him in my life. It was like he was using it against me, and I think he could tell. He once again made me uncomfortable because he then told me I liked animals. He then said, "I'll take you to feed the ducks sometime," a sentence that still haunts me to this day. Then he wrote down his full name, 3 email addresses, and 2 phone numbers and told me to keep in touch so he can take me to feed the ducks. I ended up giving the cafe all the information he gave me before ripping up the card on my bed and crying in the hotel later. Thankfully, another customer came and I moved to sit in between them. You could tell the older guy was angry with the other guy. I tried to keep conversations with both of them, but the younger guy didn't talk much. He ate and left. Another maid started talking to the older guy, and I took the opportunity to escort the younger man out. On the way out, one of the maids asked if I was okay. I guess the staff noticed I was uncomfortable. I did try to hide it. With a smile, I whispered I wasn't, and that I was going to have a meltdown. She told me to go on break, to which I did end up breaking down in the parking lot. But that's for other reasons I won't go into here. After a drink and a treat from a nearby coffee shop, I resolved myself to go back inside. The rest of the weekend was wonderful. I got to talk about memes with a table. Someone at my table drew a picture of me, and I got a photo taken with a really sweet girl and her hilarious dad. I bonded with another girl over long-distance relationships, and at the end of it all made $20 in tips. The only thing I didn't like about that weekend was the maid that ended up taking my spot next to the old creep tried to defend him to the other maids. The staff at the cafe immediately banned him once he left. Apparently he even cracked a joke about making me uncomfortable on his way out, but she was telling everyone how nice he was to her and trying to convince them that he shouldn't be blamed. This went on for a few days. She told me they talked about paranormal stuff, murder mysteries, which made my spine crawl a little. I mean, I like that stuff too, but not when a creepy guy, almost as old as my grandpa, tries to talk to me about it. She brought the guy up at a group dinner and said she felt bad for him and that he was so sweet and shouldn't have been banned. I was pretty angry she was standing up for him after crying and reliving my story to the table. She didn't talk about him again. It was pretty clear what he did was indefensible. I gave her the roses he gave me and things seemed to be okay from there. But the creepy old man at the maid cafe. Seriously, bro, get a life. Let's not meet. This takes place at an anime convention, and it creeped my friends out pretty bad. I ran a panel and just decided to call it a night at 8 p.m. I was exhausted, talking to my fiancé as we came in. Ended up not going to sleep until around midnight. There was a pop machine on our floor, and we were sharing a hotel room with 2 other male friends and one other girl called Jenny. At around 11, Jenny comes back from the convention rave. She asks if I want a soda, which we went down to the machine. I usually don't carry cash, but this night I did. I put in the $1.75 to get my bottle, and suddenly see Jenny pale. "Let's go back to the room." She's pale, grabs my hand, and nearly drops the soda. I look around and notice a guy walking up. He asks if we are attending the con, and I'm like, damn, I left my badge in the hotel room. He looks at me, and then Jenny. Yes? I'm glaring at the guy. He's pale. He had a con t-shirt on and said he was doing security checks. Now I'm concerned because security checks only happen on the con floor, not the hotel halls or rooms. I suddenly realize he doesn't have a con badge that says security. He doesn't have a walkie-talkie either, and finally Jenny sees me, gets some courage, and I demand to see the security director. By now I'm basically yelling at my fiancée, roused from the room. The guy backs up and notices some people coming down the hallway from the elevators from the rave. He takes off in a dead run towards the stairs, and Jenny was thanking me for saying what I did. I didn't get to hear her whole story until we were up in the room, and the real convention security showed up. Yeah, that guy didn't know I was friends with the convention directors and with security. Apparently the guy was Jenny's stalker. He liked her cosplay from a series called .hack//sign to the point of obsession. Jenny also did not tell her boyfriend or friends about it, thinking she can handle it by herself. I don't want to think what might have happened if I wasn't there. Some people really do get too carried away. We're only dressing up, people. I'm an 18-year-old female, and unfortunately have a history of encounters with creepers. This story stood out the most since it happened at one of the places I used to escape such things. I was at a local anime convention about 8 years ago. Yes, I'm a shameful weeb, and then it was worse. I was cosplaying a character from the popular comic book Homestruck, the alien character who was symbolized by the zodiac sign of Cancer, named Carcat. It was one of my first times actually buying things and preparing for a cosplay, and I'll admit it looked a right mess. People liked my expressiveness in pictures though, so I got to take a few. Pictures were half the fun of cosplaying. Anyway, another part was befriending some of the local con attendees and getting to know them. These can create some pretty lasting bonds. I even dated someone I met at a con, but as these stories always go, these people aren't in today's focus. Enter Alucard. This very tall guy had a very good Alucard cosplay. It seemed like he sunk a lot of time and effort into it. The only thing missing was the hat and goggles, but me being the nerd that I am thought he was just playing as Alucard when he was awakened for the second time. I asked to take a picture and he obliged. Eventually we started chatting, and in retrospect I should have analysed the conversation more carefully. The character Alucard is a vampire, and the alien characters in Homestruck have a variety of blood colours. I was playing around with my friend since middle school who accompanied me to cosplaying another alien called Terezi, and we joked around the blood colours and stuff. Alucard suddenly decided to butt in with this charming phrase, "I've never tasted alien blood before. Want to give me your neck?" We decided to believe he was just playing and played along in character. Thankfully, in character met my best friend who was very low-key protective of keeping my character's blood colour a secret between the two of us. However, consider this strike one against Alucard over here. Then the conversation switched back out of character again, and we talked about life outside of cosplay. This guy allegedly was in the military, and was actually ostracized by his peers. At the time I couldn't imagine why, aside from the obvious. However, the fact he was in the military told me he was at least 18, way too old to flirt with someone 4 years his junior. The more we spoke, however, the more he wanted to see me out of the cosplay. He even asked me to take off my wig. My hair at the time was long, curly, easily matted and hard to get in a wig, so I declined. He kept pressing to see it though, so I pulled up a picture on my phone, and I wish I'd paid more attention to his response to that. As well, most people would call me cute or something like that, but he immediately said I looked sexy. Wasn't a risque picture or anything, just a very boring looking selfie of me wearing a bright red lipstick. The day went on and I was getting more and more uncomfortable as we let him accompany our group, which expanded when my other friends from middle school joined in. She was a petite and the only one of us who was actually Asian, Vietnamese, and Alucard low-key creeped on her as well. Fortunately, my always present maternal instincts for her kicked in to keep her from his grasp. I wasn't so lucky. During the opening ceremonies for the convention, he began flirting with me, even though I told him I had a boyfriend at the time, which wasn't a total lie. I did have a boyfriend, but it was a long-distance relationship across the pond. This, of course, didn't deter Alucard, though midway through the ceremony he clamped his hand down on my crotch quite hard, causing my body to seize up in shock in response. My body hadn't elicited anything like that. He only chuckled a whisper in my ear, "If you want the screw of your life, just say yes." I didn't know what to do. I only remembered Terezi saying something like, "Don't touch her," before I blacked out. Turns out my longtime friends went into badass mode and we escaped the packed auditorium safely. We congregated in the girls' room and they calmed me down. And when we all met at Terezi's house later, we discussed the best course of action. The next day, my mother accompanied us. And she tracked this guy down. Her awesome mode seemed to activate as this 5'3" woman grabbed someone easily 6'2" by the collar down to meet her eye line and growled, "I'll kill you." When I told my boyfriend about this, he did some research, and the guy was actually in his 30s as well as autistic. The latter made me feel as though it were my fault, but my boyfriend reassured me this guy was still a soldier and still was supposed to have honor and morals, regardless of a mental disorder or illness. Besides, I'm also autistic, and would have never have done anything as messed up as that to anyone, younger or older than me. If you're hearing this now, thanks for ruining my favorite anti-hero protagonist for me. You barstool. I used to work as night security in a convention center. This had all manner of conventions in it, all the time, all year round. And I would often work nights. It was my job to walk around the stands and make sure that no one was there when they weren't supposed to be. There'd be times when vendors would get there early in the morning or would stay late at night, setting up or prepping for something, and we were totally cool with that. We were flexible. But there was one time when I was walking around, it must have been around 3 a.m, doing my round and feeling not so great, when I hear something in the background. It sounds like movement. So I spin my flashlight around to see what the hell's going on. I'm quite groggy, and I see something dart past my line of sight. I call out to them and tell them to stop, and ask to see some form of identification. But there's no one there. I then hear footsteps leading up to the ladies' toilet, and see the door close ever so slightly with my flashlight. I know someone's in the building, but there's no reason to be afraid of me. I just want to know what they're doing, and I need ID. It's 3 a.m. after all. So I open the door to the ladies, turn the light on and look around with my flashlight. There's no one in any of the stalls. I push all the doors open, and it's empty. Then I get a chill run up my spine. I flash my light towards the ceiling, expecting to see some ghostly abomination, but there's nothing there. I go to leave, and I feel very scared. What the hell's going on? I know what I saw, or am I just imagining things in my exhaustion? I chalk it up to tiredness, go grab a coffee, and wait until I'm relieved that morning. Just as I'm heading out, I speak to one of my colleagues and say that I had a pretty weird night and that I think I need sleep. He asked what I meant and told him in confidence that I think I saw someone head to the women's bathroom at night and that there was no one there. I give him an odd look. I didn't want to give him all the details, just that I felt unnerved and stuff. He gives me a chuckle, slaps me on the back on my way out and says, there's always a ghost or two in here, you don't need to worry about that. My first time seeing it was 10 years ago. They never go away. It comes with the job, bro. He gives me another pat, walks in and I walk out. I give him a confused look, just as he leaves, and wonder if he's just pulling my chain or not. I try not to think about it much. Let me set the stage for you. Last year around October, I was going to a con. A dude I had briefly talked to online said he was going, so I decided to meet there. This person was followed by a ton of people I know on Instagram, so I decided sure, why not follow him? Which is a mistake I would later regret. I met up with him at the con. With him was another girl I had never met before, and her sister. There was another story about what happened between me and her sister, but that is for another day. What happened was me, the girl, and this dude went to a haunted house together a few weeks later. The sister didn't come for reasons I don't want to get into right now, and me and the girl had been talking before that. And so we were talking a lot when we were there, but this dude was acting very strange. He barely spoke to both of us, and I would try and include him in the conversation, but he would always either ignore me or just give me one-word responses. After the haunted house, we went to eat and it was all good, at least I thought it was. A few weeks later, he starts texting the girl all sorts of nasty stuff, calling her every name under the sun, saying how she hurt him, how the house was the worst experience he'd ever had, and how she was stupid and didn't care for him. And I had to calm her down because she was freaking out, because she didn't do anything like that. She blocked him on everything. Me and the girl had been dating for a while before this, and then the next time we met, she told me that the time before the haunted house, that he kissed her even though she said no, that he groped her even though she told him to stop. Keep in mind this dude was a lot bigger than her, and even gross was the comments he was making towards me when I was 15 at the time, saying disgusting stuff like, we should invite him for a threesome. Keep in mind I was 15 and he was 18. He would also talk about very disgusting stuff with her, like how she mentioned her dog died and his response was, yeah, it's because you used it too hard, and went into graphic detail of how he did it with a dog. He told her in graphic detail about how he gave oral to a guy even though she told him she didn't want to hear about it. He was also quite sexist, telling her things like, you're a bad driver because you're a woman, and I'm more attractive than you because you're a woman, and other stupid stuff like that. My jaw hit the floor after all that stuff, and he still had the nerve to berate her and me, pretending that we were all bad guys because we didn't want anything to do with his polyamorous relationships. His girlfriend was really weird too. She kept making comments towards her. Back in March, it ended where it all started, the same con. Me and my girlfriend were in cosplay and were having a fun time, until guess who shows up? He didn't recognize us, so I was just gonna play along and take a picture, but my girlfriend was almost paralyzed. She wasn't moving, she was shaking and had her head down. So I kind of panicked and made up some excuse about how we couldn't do it because she was sick and ran off to another part of the convention. We sat down thinking we'd lost him, but the dude followed us and asked us for another picture. I told him the same excuse again, and then he finally took the hint and left. I called one of my friends who lived in the area, and we went to his apartment and had a decent time. But later on he messaged me asking if I was the cosplayer. I didn't reply. He kept sending more messages until he said, just block me if you're gonna run. And then I thought, you know what, not a bad idea. So I did just that. He tried to berate me by messaging me through different accounts, and told me how frustratingly childish I was. It's rich hearing it coming from him, the guy who throws a temper tantrum whenever someone tells him no, and that's where it ended. If any of you are congoers to the New Orleans and Florida areas, just be safe. That's all for now. So to the guy who can't take no for an answer, mind your own business. Let's not meet again. My state has one huge annual convention about 20 minutes from my house. Most of my out-of-state friends only show up from Friday to Sunday, but because of the distance, I decided to show up on Thursday too. I was 17 at the time and had decided to do my first semi-revealing cosplay, and regrettably, I used my real hair. I dressed as Akane Owari from the Dan Gran Romper games. if anyone really cares. Because my out-of-state friends weren't there, I was a bit lonely. But I had a few local friends, and I made friends with a few cosplayers who were around my age, who also cosplayed from the Danganronpa series. I was with the Danganronpa cosplayers when one of us realized there was a convention dance going on at the same time. As a group, we opted to go. We go to dance. It's like typical high school dance, with more meme music and people in amazing costumes. While I'm dancing with the Danganronpa people, I see my friend, Armin, and she was cosplaying as the character from Attack on Titan. She looks really sad, so I go up and ask her what's wrong, and she tells me that she's sad her girlfriend couldn't go today as she wanted to dance with her. Me being the nice friend who I was, close to both girls, offered to dance with her, and she said yes. We were dancing for a few minutes when I see him, Jon Snow. He looked around 25, 6'3", with long greasy hair and tiny round flamed glasses. Jon Snow and his friend walk up to us without asking and cut in. His friend went with my friend, and Jon Snow was dancing with me. The Waluigi cover of Hallelujah comes on and he starts grinding on me while singing in my ear. I try to pull away and he grabs my waist and pulls me closer. After what seems like an eternity, I come up with an excuse that I left my water bottle in a panel room. I needed to get it and got the hell out of there. I went back and found my friend, and the guy who danced with her was a perfect gentleman. Because I used my real hair on the cosplay, I'm honestly terrified he'll recognize me in public or something. But he was a real creep. Winter's not coming tonight. Let's not meet again. Me and my friend went to a local cosplay meetup at a park. I was dressed as Yunagasai from Future Diary, Mirai Nikki, an anime, and my friend was dressed as a Final Fantasy character. Throughout the whole thing, I noticed a man was watching us. At first, I thought he was just staring at the group because we looked like a bunch of freaks. He was a little way away, so I couldn't really tell. When we were doing photo shoots, the man was still there, but this time he had a camera out. I guess he just wanted to take pictures of the group and share it on Facebook or something. But then I noticed he only ever took pictures of me and my friend. At first I thought he was just taking pictures at random, so I didn't really think about it much, but I did feel odd. Well, we were sitting down, group photo shoot still going. We were sitting a little ways away from everyone else under a tree for shade. Then I noticed the guy walking towards us. This was when I started getting alarm bells. They weren't on red alert, since I thought maybe he knew where we were from and wanted to take pictures of us, which is what usually happens in these situations, but I didn't like the vibe he gave off, so I didn't let my guard down. He asked what was going on, and I told him it was a cosplay meetup. He told me he heard about cosplay since he attended Comic-Con. Okay, I thought maybe I was wrong, but should be careful. He didn't ask to take a picture with us, but kept looking us up and down and asked if I was from High School of the Dead. I told him about Future Diary, and he knew where my friend was from since he played the game. I fell silent. I started feeling uncomfortable since neither of us were talking. I broke the silence by telling him that we should be getting back to the group, and I took my friend's hand, and we were about to go when he grabbed my friend's other arm and pulled her towards him, saying that we should talk more. He started touching my friend's skirt, which was pretty short. I was on red alert and slapped his hand away, pulled my friend away, called him a perv and rushed back away from the group. The guy left shortly after. This was probably one of the strangest things that has ever happened to me, but by now I chuckle at it. I have been attending local conventions for about 8 years, and every year I cosplay as a character that covers my entire body. So heartless. GLADOS. Toothless. My own fursuit and others. I've never had an incident even when I wear my fursuit or cosplays on campus or in public. Everyone is generally pretty nice and welcoming to me, taking pictures and telling me I look cute, and how much they enjoy when the furries come to town. Furries bring in a lot of money to my city during the local furrycon, so when the incident happens, I didn't really know how to react. This year I decided to attend my first out-of-state con. This means that since I would be in a hotel, I would be at the con after midnight instead of going home. Now, since I've been performing in costume for several years, I was quite used to being able to maneuver by myself easily and would travel around the con by myself. Luckily, I had friends with me at the time because I wanted to film reactions to my costume. For the con, I was cosplaying as Foxy from Five Nights at Freddy's. The costume covers my entire body, so there is no way to tell my age, gender, body, or anything. I don't talk in costume either, I just stand still and blink my eyelight. Anyway, it was around 1 AM when my friends and I head down. My one other friend had been cosplaying as Freddy from this same game earlier, when her boyfriend was dressed as Mike, the security guard, also from the game. When we got off the elevator, I turned to Mike and said, "This is when things get weird." And oh, was I right. Not even 2 minutes later, some guy decided it would be funny to poke Foxy in the eye hard. This lodged the plastic eye right into mine. I paused for a sec to check and make sure the costume wasn't damaged. It was annoying. I quickly took my position around the corner of a hallway and waited for people to walk past. Mike and Freddy stood across the way and began filming. I was also filming from inside my costume. Shortly after I pressed play, a group of guys walked by me and one slaps my butt so hard it hurt for 5 minutes. I kind of shrugged that one off too, knowing that at 1 AM at a con people were really drunk. But then things got extra weird. Some guy walked up to me and the first thing out of his mouth was, "Can I put my penis against you?" And before I could even process what he said, he was next to me and attempting to hump my leg. Because of my poor vision, I couldn't quite see him, but I knew exactly what he was doing. I attempted to stay in character and just turned away from him. I was about to call over Mike to have him rescue me, but by the time he was already there, he too was attempting to stay in character and said to the creep, "Please step away from the electronics." The creep is confused at first, but then starts laughing. Mike chuckles a bit to try and lighten the mood, but then the creep asks Mike if he could put his penis against him. By then Mike had enough and told him to piss off. The best part was that Mike was dressed as security, so the look on the creep's face when he came over was priceless. After all, these incidents happened in less than 5 minutes. I was about to call it quits, but after I kept going and ended up having a great night and got lots of good footage. It was a weird and creepy moment, but I kind of just laugh at it now and use the story as a warning to people to treat cosplayers with respect, and for cosplayers to always use the buddy system. I don't know what I would have done if Mike and Freddy weren't there. So, creepy guy, let's never meet again. Hey guys, Mort here and thank you so much for listening. Right, live stream tomorrow. You want to be there, and you will be, because it's Halloween and I don't do face reveal live streams. This is a first for everyone, so be there. I'll probably put up a community post out some hours earlier anyway, just to remind you. Convention stories. Cool, right? I haven't had that in like 2 years. 1 year? 2 years? I think it's like 2 years now. But there's a reason for that. It's because we currently have VRCon. I've actually showed up to VRCon a little bit. I might be there again. It's still going on. So I'll probably be there tomorrow at some point. Check in to VR. I'll leave a link in the description. You can check it out. It's pretty cool. I'm really enjoying it. I think Mr. Creepypasta and everyone else who helped set it up have done an amazing job. So please go support it. You don't have to have a VR headset. You can just download the stuff onto your computer via Steam, and it takes a few minutes to set up, and you're in, and it's really fun. And you get to interact with other people and see creators' avatars and stuff. And I think it's a really cool way to attend a convention without having to go to one. And hey, you probably avoid all the creepers, because if you don't want to hang around them, there's not much they can do. Anyway, guys, you've heard enough from me now. Also, Skillshare's pretty awesome, so consider it. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.